We talk Quinton Byfield, Kings trade options, and more on this Kings Fan Feedback Friday edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 18 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. You can enjoy the NFL season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. It is a Kings Fan Feedback Friday, your chance to sound off, critique, praise, complain, celebrate our LA Kings. And if you might be new to the show, we do this every Friday, off-season, regular season, playoffs. So let's get into it. We are going to read a couple of back-to-back emails because they are both about the same subject, and that would be Quinton Byfield. Luke in Temecula checks in to lead us off. He says, I've noticed a lot of hatred surrounding Quinton Byfield, but I don't really understand it. He's 22 and needs a chance at the NHL level before fans can say he's a bust. He's had plenty of time to adjust. Give him a few more seasons in different places and times on the ice, and then you can make a fair claim. What do you think? Go Kings go. That was Luke in Temecula. And we had this from Ruben Gabriel. He's in West Covina. He says, every day are here. Thank you for that, Ruben. He says, what are your thoughts as to why Byfield can't finish and score so far this season? He's had some great looks of late, especially against the Islanders. Q is fast, he's strong, makes great plays, but can't just seem to finish and score as much as we want him to. I hope Q starts scoring to get his confidence back so he can open it up and be a great scorer that we all know he can be. I like Q a lot, and I'm rooting for him to stay on the Kings as long as he can to be a leading scorer and playmaker. Love the show. Wishing you the best, Eddie. Go Kings go, and go Rain go. And again, that was from Ruben in West Covina. Well, to Ruben and to Luke about Quinton Byfield. Am I disappointed in the production of Quinton Byfield? Yes. Am I ready to pass judgment on what his career is going to be at this point? No. I will say that there were plenty of Kings fans writing off Quinton Byfield before last season. Had a pretty decent year last year, and that helped a lot of people to calm down a little bit. But it also ramped up the expectations. And I was one of those people expecting Q to take a pretty good step forward this season to being not just a good player, but a very good player. And that hasn't happened. I also think he's kind of stuck between being a young guy and he wants to be a team guy. And I think at times he needs to be a little bit more selfish and aggressive, but that's a tough call as well. When you're winning and the team's having success, kind of hard to tell Quinton Byfield, be more selfish, be more looking out for you to get your game going, even though in the long run, it probably does benefit the team overall for him to be that kind of guy. But I understand how that seems like it's kind of a weird message. It can be a bit of a tough balancing act, especially for a younger type player. So look, I still think that there is time for Q to turn it around and be a very good player. Everyone has their expectations of what he should be by being the number 2 overall pick in the draft. That comes with its own expectations, but I'm definitely not ready to give up on him. I still think he has time to turn into a very good player. I would love to see some positive signs at some point this season. He does need to produce more for the Kings to be a much more dangerous team. That I think that's just a fact. But I still think his teammates and I think the coaching staff and the organization are still in that mode of being supportive for Quinton Byfield. Now, at some point, he just got the new contract. Expectations obviously ramp up. At some point down the road, maybe that needs to change. Maybe he needs to be more challenged. But again, at this point, with the way the team's playing, with how young he is and what he's kind of going through, I think right now everybody with the Kings is more of in a supportive situation when it comes to Quinton Byfield than challenging him to be better at this point. So we'll see if that changes. But like I said, I understand the criticism. I'm disappointed in what he's done so far. But at the same time, I still think there is time for Quinton Byfield. People have passed judgment on him before. Then we saw what he did last year. Maybe that can happen again going forward. Hopefully, that will happen going forward. Our next email comes from Jeff. He's in Eastvale. He says, I am a frequent listener and fan of the podcast and always appreciate what you do with the Feedback Friday shows. Alex Laferriere's play this year has been one of the bigger bright spots this season, in my opinion. After watching him play as a rookie last year, I thought he would be a middle six, likely third line winger at best. However, his play this season and the progression that he has shown have really impressed me. And he's one of the top goal scorers on the team, and it's currently on pace to score 30-plus goals. I know we were only roughly a third of the way into the season, but he looks like he could be a legit top six winger for this team moving forward. I wanted to get your thoughts on Laferriere this season and what you think his ceiling could be in the long run. Thanks again for fielding fan questions, as always, and go Kings go. Again, that was Jeff out in the IE in Eastvale. Yeah, you're right. You can talk about how disappointing Quinton Byfield has been. The opposite when it comes to Alex Laferriere. He has been fantastic. I'm with you, Jeff. I agree with you. I thought his ceiling was likely a third line winger, but he looks like he could be a legitimate top six winger. Now, time will tell. Just like we shouldn't, pass judgment on one season, good or bad. Same goes this year, but certainly very encouraging. One of our guests recently pointed out, I apologize if I don't remember who it was, when he was talking about Alex Laferriere, maybe it was Carl Balicki, and he said that Laferriere, he doesn't wow you with anything in particular, but he's pretty good at everything. Is he a great skater? No, but he's a good skater. Does he have a great shot? No, but he's got a good shot. Is he a overly physical player? No, but he does have a physical element to his game. I said going into the season, we thought he was going to play on the top line, and he started there. But that he needed to be more aggressive. He needed to be more of a guy that was willing to go to the net. And he was a guy that would kind of visit the crease, but he didn't want to move there. He didn't want to live there. But he's changed that this year. He's really taken a step forward. He is a guy that starts plays and finishes plays. He can start a play on the forecheck, get in, create a turnover, get the offensive possession, and then he can finish around the net. So Alex Laferriere turning into a very solid NHL player. And I agree with you. I think from what we've seen this season, and again, there's still a lot of season left to go, but he looks like he can be going forward a legit top six forward. We've got plenty more emails to get to, and we will do that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Andrei Kopitar, you can talk about the number of goals he'll score in the next game against the Rangers, Adrian Kempe, that kind of thing, more or less. And you can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in most states, including California. Download the PrizePick app today, and you could use the code LOCKEDONNHL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's the code LOCKEDONNHL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. And get ready to tackle the NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. The Chargers are hosting the Buccaneers on Sunday. I'll be at that game. Chargers are 3-point home favorites. The over-under is 45.5. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You can get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, let's get back to your emails. And up next, we've got Johnny in Phoenix. And he says, first of all, with Doughty's return in the near future and with the issues of letting players get behind him defensively, the Kings should consider making Jordan Spence a Dustin Brown-style defensive forward. Jacob Moverara can fill in his duties when Doughty gets back. I, for one, think the only move that Hiller has not made could be the biggest difference. Put Kempe in his original center position. Imagine the impact of having Kopitar, Kempe, Dano, and Byfield down the middle. We would be dominant. The Kings need to evaluate what assets they have and make any roster trades now before the rest of the league does. Not looking down a real drive to the net scoring threat will lead to another short visit to the playoffs. Keep up the Lord's work, Eddie. And that was Johnny in Phoenix. Well, okay. First off, Jordan Spence is 5'10", about 180 pounds. He's not exactly a offensive defenseman, so I'm not sure what you're seeing to make you think he could be a Dustin Brown type player. I will certainly give you credit for thinking outside the box on that one, but I don't see that being any kind of a possibility at all. Adrian Kempe hasn't played center in quite a while. Defensively, he could certainly handle the defensive responsibilities of being a center. But he's been great on the wing, and you definitely need some finishers on the wing, and he's the Kings' best finisher. So I can't see moving him to center. And if you put Byfield on the fourth line, that's not going to get him going offensively because now you're reducing his minutes. I know people have been talking about potential trades involving the Kings. I know we've even had some fun kicking around a few ideas. But I don't see the Kings doing anything significant as far as this season with a trade. First off, why make trades when you're playing your best hockey of the season? I know you're not saying potentially right now, but maybe you should get a jump on kind of the competition. The only trade I can legitimately see the Kings making is Vladislav Gavrikov because he's a UFA at the end of the year. His value keeps going up because he's playing so well, and I think he's absolutely going to test the market at the end of the year. I think he'd be dumb not to. And the Kings can't let another asset like that walk away for nothing like they did with Matt Roy. So that is a possibility. I would love to see them sign Gavrikov. I don't know if they can do it during the season because, again, I don't think Gavrikov wants to. And Rob Blake doesn't usually do that anyway. So it's going to be another very difficult decision to make. But again, the good news is he is playing well. The good news is Drew Doughty comes back. I think the defense could absorb his loss, Gavrikov's loss, and you can help your team elsewhere as far as scoring goes. So we shall see. Big decisions coming out for Rob Blake. Our next email comes from Brian in Tampa. He says, real fans will remember that the Kings were struggling in 2012. We called up two big dudes, Dwight King and Jordan Nolan, during the season, and they added size and checking into an already skilled team that created a cup winner. Rob Blake seems to be following that blueprint by adding bigger guys like Edmondson and Janot and calling up players like Samuel Helenius and Andre Lee from the AHL. The Kings look like they are built for the playoffs. How lucky are we to have Anze Kopitar? He reduced his contract down to $7 million while the salary cap is increasing, and then he goes out and produces 32 points in 28 games, a plus 15, 0 penalties, 4 game-winning goals, and the fourth most face-offs won in the NHL. The Kings better hire a great artist for his statue. Go Kings go. And again, that was from Brian in Tampa. Yeah, I think maybe Kopi is just starting to get noticed by some people across the NHL, believe it or not. I'm not talking about they know who he is, but I did repost something I saw on X Twitter earlier today about a discussion on a popular podcast about Anze Kopitar maybe being the most underrated player of his generation and what he's been doing this season, how he continues to get it done at a high level at his age. So people are starting to notice, but I don't think there's any doubt. First of all, you're right. We are very lucky to have Anze Kopitar. But he has not really gotten his due across the league. Maybe that's changing a little bit now. Maybe it's starting to get some notice, some attention, but definitely we are lucky. So the Kings, yes, they did say that they wanted to obviously play a grittier style of hockey this year, a playoff style of hockey. They've done that of late. And, I've heard what Rob Blake, said going into the season, and I wasn't sure I believed that was the formula for success, but I'm starting to believe it. Still a long way to go, but I do think the way the Kings have played of late, and it's not just the winning, it's how they're getting it done with that grittier style, playing that playoff type hockey. I think the signs are encouraging. Our next email comes from Carlos in Mexico City. And he says the Kings are finally coming together as a team and have to be taken seriously. With the exception of Toronto, they've beaten the top teams in the league. All of this without Doughty. Eddie, I would like to go back on your interview with Nick Nixon earlier this year. Nick reminded that the team that wins the Stanley Cup will average 3.5 goals per game. And I agree with him. We're getting balanced scoring, but in my opinion, we need a pure sniper to get us there. The recent talk about sending Drew to finish out his career in his hometown of Toronto made me throw up my mouth a little bit. I can't picture Drew in any uniform that's not silver and black. However, if the move had to be considered, let's give the Leafs 2 hometown boys and Drew Doughty and Quinton Byfield, plus Fiala and a 3rd-round choice, or we keep Fiala and give them a 1st-round choice. All I want for Christmas is Austin Matthews, and that was from Carlos in Mexico City. Carlos, we've been through this before. Austin Matthews is not getting traded. He's not coming to L.A. He's not going anywhere. He's not. And I will repeat this again. He has a full no movement clause, so he doesn't go anywhere unless he wants to go. And there's no indications he wants to leave Toronto, and no indications that Toronto wants to trade him. So I'm sure you've been a very good boy, but Santa is not bringing Austin Matthews to LA, as that would be quite the Christmas miracle. But it's just not going to happen. Now, I do agree with you that the Kings scoring is a bit of a concern, especially with the power play not being decent. Like I said, maybe a Gavrikov deal could bring in a scoring forward, but I would lower my expectations from Austin Matthews. Maybe a guy like Nikolai Ehlers in Winnipeg, or maybe a Brock Nelson from the New York Islanders, guys that are UFAs that the teams are looking to get something in return for. But yeah, Austin Matthews that's not going to happen. We have more emails coming up next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Hey, no matter how the last game went, anytime you take the field, you've got a shot at greatness. Give your team the best shot at winning by recruiting more MVPs with Indeed, because Indeed is the hiring partner where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. And Indeed is the only job site where you're guaranteed to find quality applications that meet your must-have requirements, or else you don't pay. Indeed partners with you on every step of the hiring process, finding great talent through time-saving tools like Indeed Instant Match assessments and virtual interviews. With Instant Match, as soon as you sponsor a post, you get a short list of qualified candidates with resumes on Indeed that match your must-have description, and you can invite them to apply right away. Plus, you only pay for quality applications that meet your must-have requirements. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your job more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Our next email comes from Spencer. He is in Olney, Illinois. We're getting a lot of emails from across the country and even outside the country, which is a lot of fun. Very cool to know we've got Kings fans all over the country. Spencer says, I'm almost an everyday video reviewer. Big fan of your work and your coverage of the Kings. Thank you. I was a massive fan of Arthur Kaliyev during the 2022 season, hoping we would have an Etsy version of Ovechkin, but obviously from play and injury status that has not come to fruition. I do agree for Arthur to be effective, he needs to be a top 6 minutes and power play time player, at very least the second power play, but we are pretty stocked with the forwards, the top 9 forwards. My question is there a line you could see him play effectively with his great shot? I would think it would need to be with a forechecking line like the second line, and replace possibly Tanner Jeannot and bring him down to the fourth line. Bring back the 12-6 setup. We have Turcotte center the fourth line with Jeannot and a combination of Thomas, Lee, Hellenius until Lewis gets back and finally gets his silver stick. Again, thanks for what you do. And like you always say, go Kings go. And again, that was from Spencer in Olney, Illinois. Spencer, the problem is, as you said, Arthur Kaliyev needs to be with a forechecker because he's not going to do that. But you said that the Kings would replace Kaliyev or replace Jeannot with Kaliyev. But the problem is Jeannot's the forechecker on that line. But I do agree, if you are going to give Arthur Kaliyev top 6 minutes, which he's not going to get, but if you were going to do that, then Tanner Jeannot is the obvious player to be replaced. But Kaliyev, I don't see Kaliyev replacing certainly any of the other wingers in the top 9. Janot's the only guy. And again, if you take Janot off that line, then you're losing the forechecker on that line. So I think for Arthur Kaliyev, his best bet is to be on the 4th line and try and make the most of his limited minutes. I do think second power play unit time is certainly a possibility, and he would certainly need to show that he's an asset in that role. But I've mentioned it before, not real encouraged with Arthur Kaliyev and where he fits in, unfortunately, with this team. Robert Kleit, he is in Hawthorne. He's an everydayer, and he says, the Kings' lack of shots on goal has baffled me. There are 2 players who have hurt the Kings with a disappearing act, Byfield and Deneau. My question is, what's going on with these 2? And can they wake up in time to really give this team a chance to really compete in the playoffs? Right now, I feel combined, they should have around 17 goals and possibly 20 plus assists between the 2 of them. Correct me if I'm wrong, Eddie. And that was Robert in Hawthorne. Well, we talked about Quinton Byfield. As far as Philip Deneau goes, I do think he's been playing a lot better of late. But I do think that maybe some have overestimated his offensive capabilities because of what he did in his first year with the Kings. He had 27 goals his first year in LA, and that was way over his career average. That was 14 goals more than he had ever scored in the season before. So that was a career year for Philip Deneau. He's not that guy. He's a 15-ish goal scorer per season. But you're right. He has started slow, and he's not even likely, unless he catches fire, going to get around 15 goals. I think he's got 2 or 3 at this point. So, but he does other things. That's not his, it's not his role. He's in a very effective third line center, good third line center. But I would say I would not be looking for Philip Deneau to be, the offensive answer to give the Kings a little more pop. I mean, anything he gives the Kings offensively obviously is welcome. But it is Quinton Byfield, right? We've talked about Kevin Fiala getting better of late. That's a great sign. And if we get Quinton Byfield going the way Fiala has of late, then that obviously makes the Kings that much more dangerous. So I think if you're looking at somebody that can possibly spark the offense going forward, it's Quinton Byfield. Our last email comes from Ed in Brea. And he says, even though we had a winning streak, I have to remind fellow Kings fans to pump the brakes. We are still a playoff bubble team. The loss in Jersey showed it. I still believe the tandem of Kemper and Portillo gives us the best chance of getting points. I'm not 100% confident with our offensive production. Kopitar and Kempe are having good seasons stat-wise. However, we do not have an elite scoring talent. Team defense, very good. Keeping opponents' shots on goal low is good to see. I had guaranteed losses for us in Jersey and at MSG as the GOAT. Jonathan Quick will get his revenge again. He says the Pacific is to me, is Vegas, Edmonton, and Vancouver. They're the top teams. So in my opinion, we'll have a dogfight with Vancouver for that 3rd spot in a weak yet competitive division. I heard Drew Doughty might be able to return late January. I say wait until after the Four Nations face-off so he can be completely healed to start the playoff push. And again, that was Ed in Brea. Ed, I'm going to rename you Mr. Positive because even a 6-game winning streak by the Kings, and that's not enough to get you on board with the Kings, but that's fine. That's fine. I would say your guarantees have left a lot to be desired. Now, I believe you recently guaranteed the Kings were going to lose to the Jets and the Stars and the Wild, and you were wrong on all of those. And let's not forget your guarantee of your Chargers to beat my Steelers. And you got that one wrong, and you had to wear a Steelers hat because of it. So you've gotten a couple right. I think you said they're going to lose to the Sharks, but a broken clock is right twice a day. As for that's fine. If you don't want to get on board with the Kings at this point, I understand that, and nobody should. Again, I've said the same thing as far as a 6-game winning streak is awesome. It's great. But it doesn't guarantee that the Kings are going to be that team all season long. Matter of fact, they probably won't be. But I think it is a positive with how they're playing, how they're getting wins, how they're in every game, and how they have beaten some of the top teams in the NHL. I will say I did check the schedule. You mentioned Jonathan Quick. There is a chance the Kings could face Jonathan Quick in the game against the Rangers on Saturday. Now, I haven't seen anything about who the starting goalie is going to be definitively for the Rangers, but I did check the schedule, and they do play back-to-back games. The Rangers are playing on Saturday and Sunday. Sunday, they're in St. Louis to face the Blues. So there is a chance that Jonathan Quick could face the LA Kings Saturday at Madison Square Garden. So we'll have to wait and see. I think it's going to be Igor Shesterkin, but there is a chance we could see the greatest goalie in Kings history in net against the LA Kings in Jonathan Quick. They've faced each other twice previously, and the two teams have split those meetings of Quick versus the Kings. We'll see if we're going to see that or not on Saturday. Thank you to everyone who took the time to email, even you, Ed and Brea. This show is literally not possible without your participation. I kid, Ed, I kid. So set your alarm clocks. The Kings are going to face the New York Rangers at 10 a.m. LA time on Saturday. The game will be televised locally on the Vandal Sports Network. I believe it's nationally on ESPN+. You can hear it on the 710 ESPN app. Now, if you haven't been following the Rangers, we talked about this at the end of Thursday's show, but they are struggling. They and head coach Peter Laviolette are taking heat for underperforming this year. They just signed their star goalie, Igor Shesterkin, to the richest goalie contract in league history. And they just traded their captain, Jacob Trouba, to the Anaheim Ducks. So the New York Rangers are a fragile but desperate team as the LA Kings come to town. Should be an interesting matchup between the Kings and the Rangers, a rematch of the 2014 Stanley Cup Final. For you everydayers, those of you that listen to watch Locked On LA Kings every day, coming up on Monday, we will recap the Kings-Rangers game and preview Tuesday's Kings-Penguins game. Tuesday, shortly after the conclusion of the game in Pittsburgh, we'll have a recap of that game. Wednesday, we'll look to have a special guest and preview Thursday's Kings-Flyers game. Thursday, we'll recap that game right after it's over. And then on Friday, have another Kings fan feedback show. That is your roadmap for next week here on Locked On LA Kings. If you want to get an email in for next week's show, all you do is send it off to lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. And that's how you can get the email to me. You can always leave your comments if you're watching on YouTube in the comment section. We appreciate that. And we would love for you to stay interactive with the show on social media. If you're a part of it, X, Twitter, Instagram, we are at Locked On LA Kings. And one more bit of news I failed to pass along as we go into that game against the Rangers. I did see a report online. I believe it was Mayor's Manor said that Trevor Moore was questionable for the game against the Rangers and that Andre Lee has been recalled from Ontario to possibly be in the lineup. So we'll keep that in mind as far as we could see another winger on that top line with Andre Kopitar and Adrian Kempe for the game against the Rangers. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great weekend. We will talk to you on Monday. And as always, go Kings, go.